Welcome everyone. This is Eminae CEO Forum. My name is Kyle Griffith, and I'm so excited for our talk today. We're going to be talking about core values. Could this be the cure for the Great Resignation? And I know many of you guys who are attending are either business owners or advisors of business owners, and I'm sure many of you guys could relate to the challenges of having running a company. One of the biggest challenges is finding the right people, retaining them, and making sure they don't walk away, right? And I can tell you from experience from what the clients that I've worked with and I have serviced, you may have a company that, is a pretty okay company, but the business owner has a great vision. They have great core values, and even though there may be some aspects of the company that the employees may not be happy with, if it's a great core values, great vision, employees stick around. On the other hand, you may have a very successful company and don't have core values, and employees don't know what the vision is for the business, don't know who is essentially running the company and what their plans are, and people can let you walk away. Especially in the M&A space, when you evaluate opportunities, one of the biggest questions I get, who are the key personnel? And you also want to evaluate not only the staff, but the vendors as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, a lot actually. There's a Q&A section, and we do like to engage. We're not a shy group here, I'm sure. You guys are not shy. You're welcome to put your questions in the Q&A. There are also going to be opportunity at the tail end to come off of mic, or come on mic rather, and ask your question directly to the panel. We want to hear from you directly. We want to engage, and that's what it's all about. So like I said, my name is Kyle Griffith. I'm the CEO and founder of Eminae Network, and I'm pleased to present to you our forum for today. It's 12:02, so we should definitely kick things off. The forum today is sponsored by the NYBB Group, Gravitas, Triangular Consultant, Stewardship Master International, Dynamic Business Consultants, Rethink Wealth. They make up the educational team of M&A. If you're new to M&A, well, welcome. I'm glad you could be here. We are a team of vetted and trusted advisors. We advise companies from startup to scale into exit in all aspects of their company. We have 42 and counting advisors on our team that cover different sectors, from legal, accounting, financial services, lending, IT, HR, operations, M&A, investment banking, CPA services, and so on. So any company that needs help in growing, scaling, or exiting the company, we have someone in their team that can work with them to help them get to the next level. So I think that's enough for me. You guys probably heard me talk enough. I'd like to turn this over to a very good colleague of mine who heads up our education committee, Roy Pellicano. He's going to take the proceedings on from here. But I really want to welcome you guys to our forum today. Once again, the Q&A, any questions you can put in the chat, and you want to definitely stick around to the end so we can engage with the panel. And before we jump in, we do have a couple of events that are coming up. We talk more about it later, but we do have an event coming up, a live in-person event on March 15th. I'll make sure that we share it in the chat for you guys. It's an in-person event. It's going to be at Grassy CPA, talking about the timeline of a business, selling do's and don'ts. You definitely want to check that out. And then on June 23rd, we have an international speaker going to be talking about how to scale your company. That's on June 23rd. More about that later. Enough about me, guys. Roy, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kyle. I appreciate that. I will be supporting everyone through the chat and the Q&A, so please feel free to use both of those. Those are important to us. Please take notes as you go through this, as we go through this, because we want to hear your questions and anything in particular that you found of value. As we get to the end of it, you will have a chance to do that, and that is an important part of what we do here. This CEO forum is important to M&A because as a network, our focus is really about trying to provide value as a network to the not just the trusted advisors, but particularly to the CEOs that are out there. So the CEO forum is a particularly important way that we communicate, because it's really about CEOs or business leaders talking to other CEOs or business leaders. M&A is really about the coming in as a deal team and a set of trusted professionals to you as a potential buyer or seller. And we really take that importantly. And because what we found in talking to individuals and CEOs is that while they have a tremendous amount of expertise in-house, the M&A process is something that is unique, and it requires a different set of skills. So in relationship to accounting or specifically success planning or even leadership coaching, technology, healthcare, there's such a broad level of expertise that can alleviate or mitigate risk in the M&A process. And that's really where M&A has a strength. We've basically put together a complete deal team to support you guys in being able to grow your companies or exit your companies. So, I mean, with that said, I would like to just thank Kyle Griffith, Andy Jacobs, Austin Bransgrove, Ken Pichelle, Winnie Benjamin, and of course, Kyle Griffith. These are all individuals who are critical to the success of the M&A educational process. And in particular, Ken Pichelle, who is the chair of our committee. I would like to say thank you to all of you guys. And with that said, I mean, today we will be talking about core values and how core values can be the cure for the Great Resignation. And of course, this is very important in the M&A process because you don't necessarily want someone to leave just after you bought a company or vice versa. And so at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Mitch to handle introductions. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please, again, take advantage of the tools to communicate to us, and I look forward to learning more about this topic.
Very good. Thanks, Roy. I'm Mitch York. I'm a certified EOS Implementer. I'll explain what that means in a minute. But I'd like to introduce three great people who are going to shed light on this topic of how to hold on to people in probably the hardest labor environment that we faced in a generation. And you'll be hearing from them, and we'll be chatting momentarily. Brian, Blair, and these three folks are clients of mine, and more than clients. I've known them all for several years, many years, and they're I consider them friends first and then clients. Brian, Blair is CEO of CrossVine Financial Planning in Wichita Falls, Texas. We do have a geographically dispersed group today. Teresa Stephenson is president of Platinum Properties, which is an amazing New York City real estate sales and rental brokerage, specializing in the financial district. And Aaron Young, who's a principal of Barnes Young Wealth Management in Louisville, Kentucky. How's that for disparate? And Teresa's from New Orleans, so we do have a good representation of the South here today. Very exciting. So you'll be hearing from them individually. So first, I'd like to start with I was going to prepare all these statistics and fancy charts for you about what's been happening with people leaving jobs, but that would just be beating a dead horse and stating the incredibly obvious. So the last I looked, the unemployment rate was something like 3.8%. Everybody blames blames COVID and the fact that people started to get used to working from home and liked it so much that they quit their jobs. There's a little bit of a disconnect there. I don't see that there's a direct connection, but there was a lot of that going around. And what happened, I think, is that the thread between employers and employees when COVID happened and when working at home started, the thread just got looser and looser. And with most companies, there is no mechanism to tighten and pull the thread closer. But I think you're going to hear with the folks that we're talking to today, who have all used something called the entrepreneurial operating system, that they've had more than their share of success with holding on to people they want to hold on to. I'll be talking and asking them about that. And To get us started, where do core values fit in to having a great business? They fit in a couple of different ways. And you'll see that there's this model of what the entrepreneurial operating system is. And it basically says that if you are strong in these 6 key components, you're going to have a pretty good company, because most companies don't know what they don't know, and they're not strong in these components, and they're not training themselves to be. But if you're strong in these components, life is pretty good. So that means having everybody in the company on the same page in terms of vision, where the company's headed, what it does, who it does it for, where it's going. People, the one we're going to talk about today, means you have the right people in the right seats. And you have to have great people to run a great business. The data component means you run the business with numbers and information, not hunches and opinions. The issues component means you solve issues as they arise, and for the greater good of the business, instead of somewhere down the road or facing the same issues next year as you have this year. The process component means having critical processes documented and followed by everybody. And the traction component is all about execution, being able to execute really well. If you're living in a 90-day world where you execute 90 days at a time and having really strong meetings. But let's go back to the people component. This is one of 6 key components that everybody on this call needs to be strong in if you want to have a great company and retain people. So you'll see there that underneath right people, it says right people, right seats. And what that means is, when we talk about right people, it means people who understand and act on and live the core values of your particular business. That's a right person. A right seat means they're good at their job. Right people, right seats. You have to have both to have a great company. You have to have both to retain employees. So you could have somebody who's a right person, but they're in the wrong seat. Maybe there's another seat. But what happens a lot is you have wrong people in right seats, people who are good at their job technically, but they don't live the values of the company. That's kind of a worse problem, to have a wrong person in a right seat. And especially when you have remote workers, because if they're not attached to your company through core values, then there's really nothing holding them back. Why not just go off and, work somewhere else, be a remote worker. I have no allegiance. I'm a free agent, and there's nothing binding me to my employer. That's a wrong person in a right seat. You don't want that. So with that in mind, let's go to Brian. And Brian, I would love for you, and there are two slides here where Brian is going to talk about CrossVine's core values. But Brian, just give us a thumbnail on the business to start with, and then we'll go into your core values and how they apply to this whole idea of retention.
You bet. And I'm real excited to be here and really hear from the other business owners on what they're doing to combat COVID, because it is a different world. It's harder to connect with people, and you want to be, it's this back and forth of, you want to be flexible, you want to have a flexible environment, and you want people to be able to work from home and to have a flexible schedule. But to do that, you're giving up a lot of those, I think you mentioned them, Mitch, threads that are tied back to the company. So it's a tough balance, but we have a wealth management firm. So we do investment advice, insurance advice, and financial planning. We're based in the Texas area. So Wichita Falls is right in between Oklahoma City and Dallas. We have a team of 20 people, 6 advisors. Our home base is Northwestern Mutual. We've been a student of, Mitch mentioned it, EOS for 4 years now. And it was about 3 or 4 years ago, whenever we read the book Traction, and we implemented the concepts and ideas of EOS. And one of those concepts was to, first and foremost, create your core values. What do you stand for? What does your team stand for? What do your clients stand for? So our leadership team, to create these, we got in the conference room for a full day or two, and it was a really fun time. We did this again 3 or 4 years ago, but I remember we said to ourselves, let's write down our absolute favorite clients. Who do we love to work with? And we filled our whiteboard in our conference room up with 20 names. And then we asked ourselves, why do we love to work with them? You know, what are the values that really shine in that relationship? And then we did the same for our team. You know, which team members really represent what we stand for? And we wrote down the names and we wrote down those personality traits. Then the hard part of winnowing it down we probably had 100 words on the board, and we combined some, we kept some, we got rid of some, and we came up with 5 main core values: resourcefulness, personal growth, reliability, drive, and anticipation. And I'll touch on a couple of them, and then Mitch, pitch it back to you. But resourcefulness, and I'll read this one. At CrossVine, we are resourceful. Life is never a straight line. We swerve left when we have a fender bender, and we swerve right when the market jitters right now. And we duck down low when the doctor says cancer. You know, helping our people is what we do. We lift them up, and when life throws them a curveball, we're on our toes, ready to serve. So the world is changing so quickly. I think being resourceful to us is so important, just because life can change in the blink of an eye. And I think you just have to be ready to not only accept that, but you have to be ready about what to do with it. The other core value I really want to touch on, Mitch, on the next page, is reliability. I had a client call me yesterday, and reliability to me is just how you make people feel and what you do whenever they reach out to you. A widow texted me yesterday. I was in Dallas working, but she was concerned about the volatility in the market. And within 15 minutes, I was talking with her, and her words that she said were just, "You calm me, you make me calm." So just being reliable. You know, she was nervous and watching CNN or Fox or whatever, and it just makes me feel good that she knows that she can call me and just everything's a little better. And the last one I want to touch on is just being anticipatory. So I'm really big on this, just because it just shows, to me, it shows the clients, or it shows your team, that you're really thinking about them. There's a really good, if you just read the part on the core values there, it talks about Danny Meyer's Gramercy Tavern, which is an awesome restaurant in New York, and they just train their team, their wait staff, to listen to conversations and do things that clients are about to think about, but you do it before they think about it, and that just makes people feel good. So those are our core values. We live by them. We hire by them. In fact, anytime we have a new team member, we're hiring probably 2 or 3 people a year. We have a big why meeting. We call it the why meeting. And we talk about why we're doing what we're doing, and we go through core values.
Brian, how do you in those meetings and in that hiring process, how do you figure out if someone is potentially a right person? Because that's going to determine whether or not they stick around.
Having good people around you helps a lot. And so we have a team of 3 or 4 people that go through that vetting process. It's hard early on whenever you are a young team and you don't have a lot of people. But we have 20 people now, and we're able to very easily figure out if they're a fit or not. I think whenever you have that momentum and you've been living by core values for 3 or 4 years, it's just that gut of like, this person fits or they don't.
And how frequently do you find that you have, in this environment where there has been a lot of remote work, how frequently do you find that people who are people who really get the core values leave versus other folks who maybe don't get it? What's the stickiness factor if people adhere and really understand core values?
That, I was thinking about that this morning. It's interesting that people who don't have the same core values and the same really common purpose that the rest of the team, you don't even have to fire them. They just don't feel like they're a part of the group. So they'll just will come to kind of a common understanding of, this isn't a good fit, is it? Rarely do people have all of our core values and they decide to leave, but it's something maybe not now, but later on in the discussion to talk about, because I think what COVID has done is really drawn a line in the sand. And as business owners, I think you have to be willing to change. And part of that change means, like, COVID has changed a lot of people's mindset. Like we had one of the best people in our company leave 2 years ago. She had a baby. She just looked at family different, and she had all of our core values. And you have to, as a business owner, like, fantastic. You need to go live what life you want to live and do what you want to do. So to answer your question, Mitch, I think it's really easy for people to leave that don't have the core values. People who have our core values don't leave very often, but it's an interesting thing to talk about when they do leave.
Mm-hmm. Great. I'm going to keep going, and then we'll kind of go through our next two panelists, and then we'll get into a more general discussion. So thank you, Brian. That was very helpful. Okay, let's go to Teresa. So Teresa, tell us a little bit about Platinum Properties.
Sure.
And how you arrived there as president. Been there quite a long while and have established quite an exciting company down on Wall Street. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I am Teresa Stephenson. I'm the president of Platinum Properties. We're a boutique real estate firm in downtown Manhattan. We've got about 14 people between staff and owners, and then another 60 plus real estate agents who are all independent contractors. We do residential real estate throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn. We are specializing in the financial district because that's where we're located. Let's see, how did I get here? I started as an agent. I've been with Platinum for 10 years. Really started kind of from the bottom up. So in a unique and kind of privileged place to really intimately know what the core values of the company are. We started working with EOS also a little over 2 years ago, just before the pandemic. And my partners and I really credit the system with getting us through. And I think part of that, of course, is, a lot of the organizational factors and aspects of it that Mitch was talking about before. But let's focus today on how core values helped us through that, and how it continues to help us grow the company and retain people. You'll see our core values here. We spent quite a lot of time on these. We did some of the conference room brainstorming that Brian was talking about. We definitely had many, many words on the wall as well. the beauty of it is I don't think what you're really trying to do is decide what your core values are, right? Because they're usually already there. You know, our company's been in existence for over 15 years. We have core values. The question is, how do we articulate them? How do we get clear on them, not just for our team, but for ourselves? So we did start out with that process. We also kept coming back to them, right? Like we started off with that first round of like, okay, this is what we think they are. And then a few days later, we'd come back to it. That's not quite right. Let's switch this a little bit. We, you know, one of our core values, family first, is really about incorporating the whole team, getting consensus, things like that. So we brought it to our staff and got their feedback, the good, the bad, the ugly, and took that into consideration. Obviously, you know, at the end of the day, it's up to us to decide what our core values are, but it's important to get everybody else's take because we want them to feel included and because they have a perspective that we don't. So we really are very thorough and just kept coming back to it until we were like, yes, this is it. The first four, I would say, were already definitively a part of who we were. Family first. We have each other's backs. We communicate openly and honestly. Our success comes from working together. Working together isn't just a nice to have that makes everybody feel good. We are more successful because we work together. Part of this comes from, you know, the founders of our company are brother and sister. So family first has been part of our DNA since we began. Diverse voices, better choices. We're talking about all different kinds of diversity. We're as diverse as the city we serve. We create an inclusive environment that fosters and encourages open dialogue. Our different perspectives and experiences result in more frequent and effective collaboration. Again, this isn't diversity as a nice to have. We are successful because we have diversity. Across many different, you know, areas. Make the weather. This is one of my favorites, and I think it kind of goes along with what Brian was talking about with resourcefulness. We don't wait for opportunities, we create them. We don't fear change, we embrace it. We don't get stuck, we pivot to get it done right. All these little bullet points underneath were ways to clarify. You know, we'd find something where we felt like something was missing, and usually it was within one of the core values we'd already identified. We just haven't articulated it quite right. Right on top of that, super important in almost every business, right? We do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. We're service driven, resourceful, and pay attention to the details. We're always up to date on the market. This last one was something that was very important to us, but frankly, in the real estate industry, you know, your clients expect you to be available after work and on the weekends because that's when they're available. And of course, they expect you to be available during normal business hours. So that doesn't really leave a lot of time. So we thought, well, this is obviously still really important and frankly could be a differentiator for us within the industry. There aren't a lot of real estate firms that are really, truly, authentically focusing on health and wealth. So this was a little bit more of an aspirational core value, and we have backed it up since we put it in place. We've shortened our office hours. We have done a lot of different things to sort of, you know, our CEO, Kashi, when somebody had COVID, he'd send them he'd have the at-home medical people come to their house to do like an in-home IV and COVID test and stuff like that. So there are all kinds of things that we're trying to do to make sure that this isn't just a core value in name only. I think the value of the core values is first, you know, like I said, just clarity, really articulating what your core values are and who you are as a company. Sorry, can you hear the fire alarm behind me announcement? Sorry about that. Always good timing. Hopefully you can still hear me. But if we're talking about how the core values work along the path, the first step, of course, is hiring the right people, right? And I think it's twofold. One, you figure out, you know who's a good fit for you because you know who you are, right? Mitch, you were talking about ways to sort of evaluate that, right? I think it's really important when you're designing your interview questions to have some of the kinds of questions that are going to tell you who somebody is. We're careful to not just talk about what is your previous work experience, right? We go a little bit into who are you? Tell me about who you are. Who are some of your biggest role models in your early life? You know, what were you known for back then? You know, and then to ask certain questions throughout that really help us get a little more insight into past experiences when we do go through their work experience. Who was your supervisor? What would they say you were really good at, right? I don't want to know what you think you were. What would they say that maybe where you had a little more room to improve if I were to speak to them? And then that gives them a little distance. They can say, well, they would say I wasn't quite as good at this. I think it's because of that, but it gives you a little more insight. And again, it's really useful for us in a number of our core values here. I think it also helps you attract the right people. Not only are you clear about who you are so that they can decide if you're a good fit for them, but it also shows them, frankly, that you know who you are. And to the right person, that's going to be attractive, right? They're going to say, wow, this company really had their stuff together. When I interviewed with them, they showed me what their core values were. They told me about how that exhibited itself in day-to-day activity. And again, that's really, if you've got somebody who's right on top of that, they're going to want a company who's right on top of that. So I think that has helped a lot. Next is evaluating. And I think, Mitch, this is something that you're going to talk about later. But I think when you know what your core values are and you evaluate people's performance based on that, you're really clear about your expectations, right? And you've already, if you've hired the right people, you're already both clear that these values are the most important things. So you agree on what you're going to be evaluated for. So when you do come to your quarterly evaluations, everybody's on the same page about what's important. You've already agreed upon about that. You're clear about expectations. And the other thing it does in those conversations is it makes it harder to ignore having the difficult conversation. So if there's any area here, whether it's somebody's not showing up for family first, maybe they're not playing well with others, right? Or they're not being proactive enough. When you get to that area, you can talk about it specifically. And because you both already agreed that these things are important, the conversation is worthwhile, the feedback's important, and you're approaching it as a team. So I think that really helps retain people. And then lastly, I would just say that it's really, really important that the core values are authentic, and that they aren't just, here's what our core values are, and they aren't even just how you make decisions, but they are, or not just the decision you arrive at, but how you make that decision. So I think it's really important, for example, if we're talking about communicating and having each other's backs and working together, we can't just come down with decisions, every day without building consensus. So it's important that we do that, right? Just making sure that we're behaving in the way that is in line with our core values. So that's kind of where we are and how it's helped us so far.
Teresa, I remember when maybe in our first session together, or even in my first visit, you had a plaque in the conference room with your core values at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they changed a lot, but they did change some. I don't know if you recall what was different. Maybe it was the health and wealth that really, I think the language was maybe different on all of them, because I think you spent a lot of time getting the words right. But do you happen to recall what changed from when you first had it to after you went through the process of discovering what your core values really were? If you don't, it's okay, but no. I don't know that they changed significantly, like you said. We definitely, the tone of them, the way that we articulated it, getting clear so that we could communicate it better to other people. I think they sounded maybe a little more generic before. And one of the big things we did, I think Brian was saying he had a similar version to this, or a similar idea here, was that they weren't just general anymore. We had our internal core values, right, that really relate to our staff and our agents. And then we found a different way, like this is all internal, what you're looking at right now. We have each other's backs doesn't really apply to our clients. I mean, of course we have their back, but they don't have to have our back, right? That's not their job. So we were able to get a lot more specific when we were clear on our audience. I think that was probably one of the biggest changes. And our core values are not different for our clients than they are for our agents and our staff, but the way that they manifest themselves is different, right? We're not helping our staff and agents with investment properties. I mean, we might, but that's not what's drawing them here.
So the way that we articulated it, I think, is a lot more customized. And frankly, we just use it so much more. And using it in the hiring and in the evaluating quarterly, we're just using them in practice a whole lot more than we were before. And if you were to go around the office 2 years ago and ask everybody what our core values were, I think they would have said, well, you know, like family and service. Whereas now, I think they'd be like, make the weather, right on top of that. Family first, health and wealth, right? Diverse voices, better choices. Like it's just, and I have to say I was impressed, Brian, when those slides kept going back and forth, you were able to go through all 5 of your core values. So that's the proof is in the pudding, as they say.
Do you think, Teresa, do you think that that having more awareness of core values has kind of pulled the string tighter? Because there was a lot of, you know, I don't know, for a year, I would visit you guys and we were the only 3 people in an office that could accommodate 100 people. And, you know, everybody else was remote.
Yeah, so I think partially because we did include, especially the staff, right? Because the staff is our closest team, and then they're the agents there, and the staff help us keep the cohesion with the agents. But because they had some say in and input into how we articulated the core values, I think that helped. In terms of the cohesion during that first year, I think that actually relates more to making sure that you're doing, you know, that you're operating in a way that is in line with your core values. Our first reaction, of course, was, oh my gosh, what is happening, right? When we were shutting down offices, let's just huddle. Let's get the family together and figure out how we're going to deal with this. And we hopped on a Zoom call with so many people from, you know, ages 20 to, you know, much older, you know, with varying degrees of technology. We got everybody on Zoom. Keep in mind, we're in real estate, okay? So we were suddenly running around all over the city trying to get as many virtual tours and video tours as we could. People were learning like 10 different technologies. We actually launched a brand new CRM at the time too, virtually, just for fun. But we started these morning meetings, and it was just a morning huddle. It was like, hey, everybody, let's get together. And it's been the best silver lining that came from COVID for us in terms of cohesion. The first, you know, weeks and months even were just, how's everybody doing? Here's how you can keep working. Here's how we can make the weather, basically, but also just, are you okay? Here's what we understand about what's happening. And, you know, I'm sure we can all understand why people would show up initially, right? Like during that time, everybody was a little bit, you know, just wanting to know what was going on and wanting some safety and security. What shocked me was that, you know, fast forward into August, at this point, we've been having 5 days a week, half-hour morning meetings with agents and staff, with independent contractors, right? They are not required to show up. In August, I thought they must be sick of these meetings by now. Let's put out an anonymous survey and just say, you know, do you want these meetings at all anymore? Do they need to be shorter? What's working? What's not working? What do you want? Out of 50 plus surveys, there was not a single person who said, I don't want the meetings anymore. We were worried about Zoom fatigue. So we're like, okay, let's cut out Fridays. The meetings are running a little long. Let's just make them 15 minutes, but we'll do 15 minutes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And it is not a mandatory meeting. And it will tell you we get 80% attendance every morning. And in terms of cohesion, like I don't think that there's another thing that we're doing that is as helpful or as useful. And it helps with all of the other things, because so much of the core values and the value that they bring is from, you know, referencing them and implementing them frequently and consistently. And that morning meeting is one of the things that gives us an opportunity to do that.
Roy, it looks like you're talking, but you're on mute.
Yeah, I realized I've got my microphone muted, not my Zoom. So Teresa, I'm sorry. We actually have a question right on this concept of the independent contractors from Jeff. So Jeff, if you have the mic, if you would like to ask your question, please. I don't know. Jeff might be suffering the same problem where his microphone is muted, but not his Zoom. Okay, so Jeff might be able to follow up later, but his question was basically, how do you hold your independent contractors to your core values? So I assume that's an accountability issue for your independent contractors. And so how do you hold them to it? Obviously, these meetings are critical to bringing them into your culture, but how do you hold them accountable?
I mean, again, hiring the right people is key, right? And at the end of the day, I think it comes to the idea that like your core values are not, there's nothing right or wrong about being family first, right? They're going to be like, there are plenty of people in real estate who are lone wolves, right? You go into a lot of these big real estate brokerages, everybody's got their little independent cubicle and that's their business and they like to work alone. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being an independent worker. But that person is probably not going to really appreciate what we have to offer, right? Like a huge part of what we have to offer is working together, the support, hive mind, all of that. And there's a particular kind of person that's going to thrive at Platinum. So hiring is so, so, so important. Once that person is in, like we're pretty good at identifying who has our core values. Once that person is in, if they're dropping off in any particular area, it's so useful that we have this chart and we can actually point to it and say, right here, you know, I think you're a make the weather kind of person. In this scenario, that didn't happen. So let's talk about what's going on, right? Like why isn't this happening? And it makes that conversation easier. Sorry, guys. Great idea. But if you have somebody who's consistently lacking in a particular core value, then it goes back to what Mitch was talking about with right people in right seats. Somebody might just not be a right person, right? If they're never right on top of that, and they have a serious problem with it, then the accountability just eventually first you're saying, how can I help you improve in this area? Let's talk about it and see if there's a way to get better at it. And if not, then they're just not right for the company. And ultimately, there are hard decisions to be made. If somebody, usually if somebody's right on top of that, they're not a great agent to begin with, right? You've got to be really on top of things. If somebody's not family first, and maybe they're not playing well with others in a way that affects our culture, they may still be a top producer, right? They may still do very well with their clients, but they might also be killing my company culture. And that is not worth it. And it's a really, really tough decision to make because you see those dollar signs, and those dollar signs are a very important part of the business. But ultimately, in the long term, that person is going to affect your overall company dollar signs because they're really affecting morale. So it's really important to hire properly, to try and find someone who's already a right person. And then it's very easy when you've got the core values articulated to address an issue in any particular core value. And ultimately, the ultimate accountability is we're not a good fit. And being able to make that decision. And it actually helps with retention with the other agents, right? Because they see this team, this company is really walking the walk when they say that it's not about, just about dollars, or it's not just about, it's not just a bunch of words up there. If you're not doing if you're not who we say we are, then you're just not a fit, and they're going to make that decision to protect the culture that we do have.
Thanks, Teresa. That's great. Let me bring Aaron in, and whoops. And Aaron Young, tell us a little bit about your business, and then tell us a little bit about your core values and some of your emojis here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Barnes Young Wealth Advisors, we're here in Louisville, Kentucky. If any of you are bourbon drinkers, then you know where we're at. Hopefully you are. We are a multi-generational financial planning firm. A lot of times our clients are in retirement or approaching retirement, and they have found that if their goal is to spend $25,000 a month through retirement, that they're not going to spend all their money, which means they now have to answer two questions, which is, Who do I give it to and when? And we help them not only distribute money through retirement, but help them have family conversations with their children and how they're going to transition money through the next generations. But on to our core values. I'm going to touch a couple of things in our core values. Number one is how we use them and on our hiring, and then also going forward as a team. Number two is we are in acquisitive growth, so we are acquiring practices, and so I'll speak on how our core values are important in that process and really a recruiting tool, and then we'll go through all the core values. So let me hop into them real quick. So our core values, as everybody's mentioned on here today, core values are great, but if you've ever done any exercises before where you do like a planning day, which we've all done, and you do your core values and you make your goals, and then you don't review it and bring it out into the front at all point in time where everybody can see it, and then they don't matter. And so you have to live them every single day. And I love marketing and I love getting stuff out front. And so I'll get this in front of my camera. We have little stickers made of all of our core values. And if any of you are college football fans, then you're probably familiar with helmet stickers that you get for different reasons. And so we keep our 5 core values in sticker form. And there is anybody on the team, as they see people on the team exemplify the core values that are important to us, they are to give that to the other team member. And this is not something where there's a million of these given out a day or a week. They are intentional, and they need to truly be exemplifying that core value. And that is something that we do to keep it out front. And so I'm in my office, I have a door with like a glass panel next to it. And so every time I get a core value sticker, it goes up there. So everybody walks back and see my helmet stickers. And so I think that's important to us. And as a visionary, to use an EOS term, my job as visionary is to promote culture, number one, and to keep the vision out front. And so we put the big vision for this year, the big goal for this year on t-shirts as well. Keep it out front, make sure people live it and breathe it every day. I think that's incredibly important. So our first core value is freedom and responsibility. And that is just when we hire someone, we give you a lot of freedom. We have a very flexible schedule. If you need to go to the doctor, or especially have a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, if people with children during COVID know, like the world, the 9 to 5 does not work with kids during COVID. That was impossible. So you don't need to come ask me if you can leave, or if you can come, or if you're going to be here half day Friday. You just do it, because we're going to give you a lot of freedom, and we expect responsibility as teammates in return. And so that is freedom and responsibility. Use good judgment. I don't, somebody was asking me today, there's a gala, a client wants us to sponsor, 8 top table or whatever. And they predominantly work with that relationship. And I don't expect them to ask me if we should pay the money it takes to support that. I expect them to make that decision, and we as a team would judge them by the decisions that they make. And that's the freedom that we give them from day one. We just recently hired someone to run the whole retirement plan divisions of our firm, and we needed some software, and it's about $10,000 and some few other things. And being new, she asked for me as the owner of the firm for some feedback on, I think we really need this, but I wanted to run it by you. You don't need to run that by me. You buy it. If we need it, you buy it. I trust that you're making that decision. That's freedom and responsibility. Solutions-based thinking. Turn complaints into ideas, processes on the team, unique planning recommendations. This is just creativity. We expect people to find the solution. Have you ever had somebody on your team that comes back to you and there was the solution that they saw, like, I called XYZ place or this attorney, this CPA, and they didn't know the answer. Well, why are you back here telling me that? Go find the answer. Elon Musk says, if I have to do your job, then why are you here? So it's find the answer. We expect people on our team to have the solution in mind. I don't know if it's my screen or if it's all screens, Mitch, but I can't see the writing on the bottom of the other ones. I hope everybody else can.
Yeah, I can. Can you
Okay.
all?
And so the next one is our adder sticker. And this is really just, they should be adder to the culture of what we're trying to accomplish. And positive attitude, they wake up and they can make it a sunny day, even if it's raining outside. Next is above and beyond. The first thing that came to our mind when we thought of above and beyond was to infinity and beyond is Buzz Lightyear. So that's why we use Buzz Lightyear. And that's just going above and beyond. They're proactive, they're driven, they're doing that for clients, and they're doing that for their team members. Service is a lost art. And to provide service and to deliver that model, the team goes above and beyond all day, every day. And the last one is GSD. The S can be whatever word that you want to put in there, depending on who you are as a person, but you just get stuff done. And that is just, sometimes if you need to stay extra hours to get something done, I expect you to do that. If you're done early and you think there's some freedom in your schedule that you can go home, then do that. Like, don't ask me for that. I expect you to make that decision. So GSD is just people that get stuff done. Those are our core values. We live those every day, and to bring them to life, we decided to use stickers for them. So how do we use them? We have a culture deck that goes along with these values stickers, and it mentions a little bit about our values. We give that before we interview someone. They get that in email form. Then we expect them to read that. In the interview process, I ask them questions about the values. What did you think? Tell me examples of when you've done that. And a lot of times by their responses, you can get a good feel on how they digest your values. And as I believe Teresa mentioned before, it's not right or wrong. It's just who we are as a people. Like this is our tribe, and this is how we operate. And if that's not you, to give an example, we had someone that was extremely smart and talented on our team 3 or 4 years ago. And to have them leave at that point in time would have been a brain drain on the team. But we elected to have them leave because they were a stick in the mud all the time. And it's just a cancer to the team. And it's a tough decision. Everybody says they would make that decision. Like, oh no, culture is number one and foremost. But when they carry a lot of intellectual property for the team, it becomes more of a tougher decision. But we as a team made that decision, and I was proud of the team at that point in time. And so that's how we use it in the hiring process. There's a great book called Who on the interview process. And we put our core values kind of in the process that Who uses. We also use it in the review process. How are you exemplifying core values? I want to talk about how you exemplified those in the last quarter of last year. Our Chief Operating Officer, Lauren, does most of the reviews in our personal development plans, but that's how we review those. On mergers and acquisitions. So we have 2 practices that we're actively purchasing right now. One's about done, and one we just started the process. And, what really gets some deals over the finish line is acquisition of talent. The bottleneck, I think, for all businesses going forward is not business. There are plenty of you all out there that want someone like us as financial planners. The bottleneck is talent going forward. And so we are always trying to find talent, and sometimes buying practices, it was a decent practice and it had a decent book. But the talent, the staff they had on it was worth us paying maybe even a little bit of a premium for it just to absorb that talent, because I won't lose them once we get them here. The other way that we do that is sometimes our industry, financial planning, is old. I think the average advisor in the United States is like 58 or something. And that's the average, Mitch, not the most of the practices.
Way to the right on the curve. Anyway, keep going, Aaron.
Most of the advisors that we run into are 65, 67, 70 years old. And that's a different generation, and that's okay. Like they grew up in a different world, and I'm not here to tell them how to run their business. But when we purchase their business, they're team members who are now our team members really love our culture, really love our culture, because it is not like a, hey, I expect you to be here at 9. And even if you've got nothing to do, you're staying until 4:45, like to do nothing except be on Instagram or whatever you do. And so we're a little bit different than that, but we also run hard, but we also have freedom and responsibility. And so that is a big, we will keep talent. And when we're acquiring businesses, I think it's usually an upgrade for the people that were on the team to join our team. And so we use that. And a lot of times we get inbound people wanting to join our team because other team members, people go, I want to be on that team. Like, I want to be on your team. That sounds amazing. And so that's important to us. Last thing I was going to mention here, if you're big on culture and you're big on values, I think a really good book that I read maybe a year ago is No Rules Rules. It's by Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, who is really big on culture. And I was already a big proponent of culture, but I think it was a really, really good book for me to read, and how they promote culture, how they promote freedom of schedule. And it was a really good, actually, I don't read, but I do listen to books. So, but it was a good listen for me.
That's great, Aaron. Thank you. Do you think, because your core values are so present, and people can literally see them like stickers on walls and on their office doors, what's the relationship between that and retention of people who really get it? The visibility of the core values and the retention of people.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly important. I mean, that's why this webinar is here today, and there's people on here, because we know that. But to put it in a real life example is, we have a lady that used to work for me and left and went to a competitor, and she shouldn't have. She got an opportunity to get a good promotion. And about 3 years ago, she continued to go up the ladder, and she was making really good money, but was just in a bad culture, bad environment. She came back to our team for a 50% pay cut. Now, there are some personal things that allowed her to do that. That's not common. But the reason she came back is she's like, I just want to be loved, and I just want to be somewhere where I'm not anxious every day. I go home and I'm just stressed out. And so that is something that I'm pretty proudful about. Like, people come back, if they leave, number one, I stay in touch with everybody usually, even if it was a bad exit. Sometimes it's, we let you know way before. Nobody's ever fired by surprise, which very rarely people are fired, but we are clear on communication. But a lot of people come back or stay in communication with us because of the culture that we have. And so we never lose anybody for culture. Sometimes, we're really good at training people. Sometimes we lose people because they have a better opportunity somewhere else, and they've outgrown us. And that's okay. That's okay. We're okay with that.
That's great. Thanks, Aaron. I have one more thing to share, and then we're going to go to Q&A. So this is about maybe 2 minutes worth. I promised everybody in the lead up to this panel that there's a tool that I would introduce, and it's called the People Analyzer. And this helps you. If you want to retain people, you first have to be really clear about what your core values are and present them all the time, at a minimum quarterly, getting everybody together, however you just do it, virtually or in person, and letting them know, these are our core values, this is why they're important, and give them the speech about your core values. And then there's a tool that allows you to have a really good, productive quarterly conversation with every employee. So as an example here, if you look at these pluses and minuses and so on, you'll see, I'll draw your attention to the bar. That's the last row. The bar is the level at which people need to be at or above to be a right person in your company. So a plus means that we want the bar to be that you exhibit that core value most of the time. That's what a plus means. A plus minus means we need you to demonstrate that core value at least some of the time. And a minus means most of the time you're not exhibiting that core value. So every quarter when a manager has a discussion with an employee to see where they are in terms of being a right person in this company, they give them a rating of a plus minus, or a minus. Most of the time, some of the time, or most of the time not. And it's a really good discussion to have. It doesn't, if you're below the bar, like John Smith here is below the bar, or George Wilson is below the bar because a plus minus is below the bar of a plus, it doesn't mean, oh my God, this is a catastrophic thing. It means, hey, we really need you to think about this particular core value more, and what can you do to live it more? Because that's what holds everybody together. If you have one person who is a wrong person in your organization and everybody else is the right person, it's just an infection that will spread. If someone is a downer and everybody else has a great attitude, and someone is always saying no and everybody else says yes, then they're not living your core values and they're going to pull everybody else down. So that helps with retention when everybody is a right person. Then there's also this idea of right seat. And what we do there is we say, well, there's core values, that's right person. And then there's right seat. You do a great job in your role, in your function and the roles of your function. And we ask 3 questions when we evaluate someone in terms of their seat. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it? Do they get it? Do they really understand their seat extremely well in all aspects of it? Do they want it? Do they show up every day eager to do that job? And do they have the capacity to do it? Emotional, intellectual, physical, and time capacity to do the job well. The answer to those questions has to be yes, yes, and yes. If you're a yes, yes, and yes, you're in a right seat. If you're something less than that, there's an issue that needs to be resolved. So this is a great tool. I can explain it more for anyone that's interested, but it helps make sure that you have the right people in the right seats, which is the key to retention. That is the ultimate key to retention. So I'd like to turn it back to Roy and Kyle to moderate questions and conversation.
Excellent. So first up, we have Ezra. So I think I hear him. So Ezra, please start us off on the Q&A session. Ezra?
Oh, here you are.
There we go.
Okay, guys, great presentation. I actually worked with someone who's very much in tune with EOS. I myself do acquisitions due diligence and CFO metrics work, business modeling. And I was just wondering, really, the sub-concept of like the top-down approach and a participative approach. And you're 100% right that the culture changed, and over the last year and a half, there's been a lot of swings in the business world and on employees. But I'm just wondering, you know, between owning up on responsibilities and assuming leadership slash culture and teamwork and participative, how do you guys look at that from perspective of a $25 to $75 million company, you know, in gross sales?
So I'll answer that. Core values, to stay intact, you have to have 360 feedback. And so 360 feedback is giving, if I'm answering your question correctly, 360 feedback is giving feedback right then and there. Like right there, and it's being open and honest with each other. And the feedback that you're giving is going back to the core values. Yay or nay? Did you go off line from the core values that we have? 360 feedback has to be worked on every single day, and you have to keep it front and center, because that is what's promoting those core values every single day. We can have fun stickers like this, but if we see somebody not uphold the core values, because a lot of times everybody is going to jump at the point and go, oh, you showed core values. I loved it. I loved it. You were great. But what happens when somebody on the team does not show the core values? Well, you have to have a place where everybody's comfortable giving feedback from the bottom to the top. And so I feel, and you can ask my team, somebody was hired 3 days ago. I hope in a very short term, they feel comfortable giving me as the owner feedback. That's the environment we have to have, which then promotes the core values. We can promote that very freely every day with 360 feedback. To me, that's the most important thing to keep those ingrained in the culture.
I hear what you're saying, Aaron. I'm just wondering from a productivity standpoint, and maybe I'm a little old school with this, going back 15 years or so. The owner, business owner, is probably never going to satisfy every single person. You know, if someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed and they weren't happy with their McDonald's meal, that shouldn't really necessarily hinder the performance of the organization, right? So what I hear the 360 concept from the standpoint of delegation and feedback, that I think there's got to be some sort of a balance where the team could take it to the next level and not get hurt by politics or by bad moods, which are poisonous. Would you agree?
I'll add, so the word that keeps on coming to my head whenever you're talking is the phrase interdependence. And whenever we worked with Mitch on creating our accountability chart, not an org chart, accountability chart. Anytime you say org chart, you get your hand slapped. It's an accountability chart. And I would say that if a person has a bad McDonald's meal and they're not doing their job, it should be felt, because we're counting on them to do a job in the organization and they're not doing it. So that term interdependence, I think, to take it back to what Aaron was saying, like, it's not a hierarchy situation. Like, that's what the 360 is. Like, we should be able to give each other feedback. And if you're not holding up to either your job, like what you told us you were going to do, or the core values, we should have, just free reign to just call you out on it.
And you can't wait till their quarterly development meeting to call them out. It's too late. It's like, I have a 7, 5, and 3-year-old, and I've read books about how to become a parent, because who knows how to do that. But you hear a lot of times, like, you can't punish your kid for something they did yesterday. They're not going to connect the dot. Like, why am I in timeout for something that was yesterday? And we have to. And culture is not built overnight. We had, when I originally merged with another group years ago, bad culture. And we had to fix that. It took a few years, and we had to get rid of some people, as I mentioned before, extract them out of the team, add some good people in on the hiring process, and build that culture. But you have to stop them at that point in time and go, hey, we're human beings. I have bad days all the time. Like, that happens, because life is real. But you can't spread that around. So how can I help you? Maybe you need to teach that person. I would think the first thing that goes off in my mind is, how do I teach that person, how to deal with that in that point in time when they're angry or whatever, if they're in a client facing position or if they're internal. Obviously, if they're an internal person, they can close their door and mute themselves. That's fine. But maybe you have to be in front of the client next day, and that person's got to have that skill set, that emotional IQ, to rise and above, even when it's been a bad morning. And so that's where I would do that. And again, it's not something that you can bring into a team and implement tomorrow, but it's built over time, and it's built with people.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've heard throughout all of this is that underlying EOS, as well as each and every one of your practices of this in your companies, is that accountability is an unspoken value. And as a result, to Teresa's point, individuals who don't align with the accountability value will ultimately push themselves out, or because they'll feel uncomfortable. And so to me, from what I think what I hear, Ezra, I think what I hear you asking is that underlying all of this is this concept of accountability that is critical to implementing the 360 and implementing the right seats and the right people. So, you know, to me, that sounds foundational, even though it's unspoken.
I think it's also important. Aaron was talking a lot about, you know, how you have to give feedback in the moment and consistently. There's a great book called The 1 Minute Manager that's really good in term and simple, like very thin book, quick, easy message, but important. I think so much of it is about how you give the feedback too, right? Part of it is it has to be consistent, but we're assuming here that this is a right person who's having a bad day. Right? If it's a wrong person, that's a different issue. But let's assume that they are someone who is a good employee. Then it's really about making sure that when you're talking to them, you're addressing the behavior and not the person. Right? I think there's a lot of room for how do I give effective feedback. And if you are doing that and you put that work in and someone is not getting better, then they're just the wrong person. But so much of it is about giving feedback in a way, I think that someone can take on, right? And you know, personally, I've put a lot of work into how I deliver feedback to say, hey, this is a behavior that we need to talk about. This is a thing that happened that is not getting you the results that you want. It's not the results that we want. It's not the results that you want. It's not the impact of it, right? The results that you're going to see aren't going to be in line with where you want to get. So let's work together as a team to figure out what we need to do to improve this. And I think, you know, we're in, you know, and I think probably any company where you're working with independent contractors, you don't have the luxury of falling back on, you're an employee, so do what you need to do because it's your job, right? And because I tell you to do it. Ultimately, an independent contractor is really more of a partner. We can't tell them what time to be in the office or what time to leave. We can't tell them they have to be at the morning meeting. So in a way, it kind of helps us because we really have to attract and retain and find other like inspiring, motivating ways to, you know, to get people to do what we want to do. And, you know, I think that really pays off and it forces us to focus on what are the smartest ways to give feedback. So that you inspire someone, and then instead of having someone do what it's you're not going to get the same result when someone's doing what you want them to do just because you told them to do it, as when you've had an intelligent conversation that's framed as if they're your partner and you're equal, and getting them excited about what they're going to do, getting them to feel like you're on their team. You're just going to get much, much better results. So I think it's really important to put a lot of time and energy into how to give that feedback in a way that people can take it on and be excited about it.
So I mean, so I just want to commend Mitch and the panel, and I've been working with Mitch for about a year now. We have implemented EOS in our company, and we're at the point right now we're about to roll it out to our employees and our staff and our contractors. We want to make sure we have a full grasp of it first. So we need to think of, you know, of a bus, you have right people, right seats. We was cleaning out the bus. We was, you know, putting some oil in the engine and making sure that
in the back.
Yeah, making sure the bus is, you know, operational, right? You have to start at a certain point. And I have to say, you know, especially the company ours, we have multiple owners, making sure that all the shareholders are on the same page, share the same vision. And each one of us have our own uniqueness, but as a team, we share the same vision. You know, one of our core values is that we believe that all business is personal. And I really connect a lot with what Aaron shared, because when you're involved in a merger, even though it's two companies that's merging, there are two CEOs, there are two CFOs, there are two, you know, managers, there employees, and is the culture is most important aspect in any business. Is just in my opinion, right? I know there's a lot of technology and AI, but even so, as a developer that builds that software and manages that software, updates that software, and sells that software if it's a service that they're selling. So the people aspect is most important. I would like to open it up. Thanks, Ezra, for asking that question. Roy, do we have any more questions in the chat? And also there is an open invitation. Anyone would like to join the panel to engage. We would love to bring you up to the stage. If we were in a live environment, use the time to come up to the stage and engage with the panel directly.
I see a question from Mark. Is Mark Miller there?
Yeah, I'm in the process of bringing him up, so just give me a minute. Yeah,
let's bring Mark up. And that was a great question. Roy had mentioned with Teresa about your contractors. Like if you have a company, you have 1099 contractors, you can't necessarily tell them what to do. But if you have a great culture and they buy into that, and I think it was Aaron that mentioned, hey, you have that booklet or that pamphlet when they first join. Here, these are our core values. This is what you believe in. Take some time to digest this. You may be a great salesperson or great manager and all, but we want to make sure that your core values match ours. So that's a great question. So I see Mark is joining us. Welcome, Mark. Dr. Miller.
Thank you, Kyle. And I first want to thank the panel and Mitch. Excellent presentation. So my question, I'm a coach. I'm a psychologist and a coach. So my focus is on you as leaders. I mean, certainly everything that you've said as in terms of the core values of your companies, of your organizations, of your following up with your people, making sure the right people are in the right seats, etc. So what happens? I'm assuming that as human beings, even you as excellent leaders have bad days or have issues that may intrude upon your being as focused and enlightened as you are, certainly in everything you've said on this panel. So I'm just wondering, what do you do when you become aware that you're not having the best day, or you're not as focused perhaps even on your core values as much as you would like to be because of distractions, etc. So what do you do to right yourself? And is that something that you can discuss with anybody in the organization? Do you have coaches that work with you other than Mitch? I'm just curious about that.
I'm never shy to speak. So emotional IQ is something I've gained over time, being married and having children. And one thing I've learned is to give myself space if I'm having a bad day. The second thing is, as a team, we always say that it's okay to say, hey, we always try to give us on a scale of 1 to 10 how you're feeling. And sometimes people will be overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. We got a lot of new clients coming in, whatever it may be. And you pop into their office and like, hey, I need something. And it's not, in the 360 feedback, we want them to give feedback like, hey, I'm overwhelmed, but it's not always easy for them or the skill set for them to do that. So we want to teach them to say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at like a 9 right now. And I'm here for you, but I just want you to know where I am as a person right now. And so now I immediately know where they are, and I can give them space or whatever it is. So I guess to answer your question, it all comes back to communication, but improving everybody's communication skills so we all know where we're at.
I think knowing yourself too, like if you're on the other side of that, what Aaron just said, and you're the person who's having a terrible day, just having people around you that trust you enough and that have the safe space to say, hey, Brian, I think, you're acting kind of weird today. And that's kind of a little bit of a check. But then just knowing yourself and knowing that, if the stars have aligned and today is just not the right day for you, sitting back and, it's easy today to get caught up in all the bad that's happening, but just sit back and think about what you're grateful for and what things have gone well and try to take a positive spin on it. That'll really change your mindset.
I'll throw my 2 cents in as well. I totally agree with everything that Aaron and Brian have said, and I don't think I can say it better. So I would just say that in addition to that, I think, you know, like Aaron said, there are going to be days when you just do have a bad day, right? And giving yourself a little space and a break is important whenever you can. I also think there are times when, you know, personally, just in total transparency, I think one of my best and worst qualities is that I'm very intense. I care a lot, you know, and that obviously has some real positives to it. But then there are days when I maybe have too strong of a reaction, you know, when something's going on or I'm having a bad day. And I'm doing a whole lot to make sure that that's few and far between. But when it does happen, or when I am having a bad day, I think you gain a lot of credibility by being able to say, hey, whoa, sorry. I'm having a bad day. That's not in line with our core values, or that's not how I should have handled that. Just wanted to let you know that, and I'm genuinely sorry, and moving on, you know. And if that happens once a week or even once a month, it's probably not a good thing. And then, you know, again, maybe doing a little training or research or, you know, self-discovery there is important. But I think when it does happen and when you are having a bad day, having the space to be able to say, yeah, I'm having a bad day. And if it does lead to some kind of behavior at some point that isn't completely in line with your core values, to be able to identify that, apologize for it, and move on. And if you do that, you're leading by example, which makes it easier for someone else to say, hey, I'm having a bad day, so that you know what's going on. That's so valuable, right? To know whether there's like a big issue that's really happening within the company that you need to know about, or if somebody can just say to you, you know what, I got some stuff happening at home. I'm not 100% today, just so you know that. Then you can say, give them the space. Hey, I'm here for you, right? Family first. We've got your back. What do you need? Do you need to go home? Do you need, you know, is there something we can do for you? So, you know, those are a couple of things that, you know, I think are good tools in the belt as well.
Thank you. Those were great responses. Thank you.
Did Renee have a question? I see she has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Roy, for sharing that. I believe Teresa sort of answered what I was going to ask, which is the transparency aspect. I think she cleared it up, whereby the question I was going to ask, is it okay within the culture where everyone understands that if they are not at their top of their game, that they have that trusted environment where they can say, hey, everybody, right now, I'm not at the top of my game. I'm a little vulnerable right now. And please excuse me if I seem off color in my tone, my attitude, my demeanor. You know, is it okay to say that? And I think what Teresa alluded to is that, in a way, I think she's saying, yes, it's okay. Not to be reactive, but proactive. In other words, sharing with them up front before they have to say to you, what the heck is wrong with you? Did you get up at the wrong side of bed? And then said, yes, I'm having a bad day. I think that's not going to be as good as making sure you come in. Good morning, everyone. I love you all. I'm not at the top of my game today. I need my full support and cooperation, and your strength for me to get past this. Is that okay? Is that part of culture here?
Well, I like what you said at the end there, because as a team, we all have a common purpose.
Okay.
And if we're depending on you to help out and you're not having a good day, and we have open lines of communication of, okay, you're not having a great day, how can I help? Because, the job still needs to get done somehow. So I need to step in a little bit and help out. So I think what you said there at the end is spot on.
Thank you. Okay.
We're getting close on time, so what I wanted to do is, I'm going to go out of order for a second. If there's a video link that I don't want to take the time to look up now, but it's really a video on core values, their place in the workplace, and how they're used and how some great companies use their core values. If you're interested in it, I want me to send it to you as a way to think about how can we use our core values to retain our employees better, send me an email. I'll send you the link. There's my email, mitchell.york@eosworldwide.com. And I'm going to give the rest of the day to the rest of the 5 minutes to Kyle and to Roy and to close us out.
Well, thank you very much, Mitch. This information is very fascinating. For those of you that are still here and still engaging and still here, when it comes to core values, I can't stress the importance of having that down pat and knowing the true purpose for your company. Core values, vision, mission, it's key. Whenever I'm speaking with buyers, folks that are buying companies, there's 3 things I tell them they must have. One is they must have a vision. They must have a plan. They must have a team to help incorporate that acquisition. Whether you're buying, selling, engaging in a company, you must have a process involved. Here at M&A, we have different types of events. Today's our forum. This is geared primarily to business owners and advisors that want to learn how they can best help their CEOs take their business to the next level. We do in-person events. So we're not just names on a Zoom screen. We do meet and we do connect. We'll be connecting next week with we have a deal that one of our members is working on, and the seller of that company will be at that meeting to discuss the opportunity that that particular deal. So I implore you to check us out, learn more about what we're doing. We have different chapters across this New York City, and we do different events geared towards business owners looking to scale, exit, and grow their business. Our next event, if you guys are familiar with Allison Maslin, she's the owner and founder of Pinnacle Global Network. She'll be our speaker, and she'll be talking about how to scale a company and how to do it fast. You can Google her, look her up. She owns lots and lots of companies. She has grown multiple businesses, and she's going to be here talking to our members and our CEOs and how to build their business. So I just want to thank Mitchell York. I want to thank Aaron, Brian, Teresa. Thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge and insight on core values. And I especially want to thank the education committee that has put this event together. And Ezra, Mark, and Winnie, thank you for coming to the stage and asking your question. And Roy, I just want to turn over to you to close things out, but I appreciate one of you guys, and thank you again for attending. Roy, I'll turn it back to you.
That's great. And I'd like to thank all our speakers as well as Mitch and the fellow committee members to talk about team. I wasn't able to make the last meeting, and they were able to get me all the information I needed to be able to help support you guys in your presentation today. So M&A is an incredible network. It's an incredible team. As Winnie said, we are opening it up to CEOs and business owners to come join us. And in order to take advantage of all the advisors through special closed opportunities that will not be available to the public. So again, I'd like to thank everybody and have yourselves a great day.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, y'all. See you, Mitch.
Take care, Brian, Teresa, Aaron.